Till now, we have heard the perspective from the government dignitaries and the thought leaders from the government ecosystem, if I may say so. Let's have a perspective from the industry, because as we all know, to make it successful, the education, the marriage and amalgamation of government and industry coming together has to happen. So, and here we have with us the industry leader, Mr. Deepankar Bhattacharyya, head of India and ASEAN Education Enterprises, Autodesk, and we all know Autodesk is a leader when it comes to design and manufacturing for software for the design aspect. So, over to you, Mr. Deepankar Bhattacharyya. Huge round of applause for him, please.
Yeah, I'm actually in the cusp of morning and afternoon. It's just 12, so let me wish good morning and good afternoon. Eminent speakers on the dais, other senior academicians, and other people who are present here in this Global Education and Skill Conclave. First of all, on behalf of Autodesk, I'd like to thank the entire team of APAC News Network for having invited us to this August gathering. So my name is Deepankar, and I'm leading the education initiatives for Autodesk based out of Bangalore. The topic is reinventing education in New India. So governance, policies, emerging trends and best practices. As a technology leader, obviously, we don't have a real say in the governance and policies as such. That's for the government to mandate the policies. But what I will focus is primarily on the emerging trends and the best practices. So many of the eminent speakers have already spoken about the national education policy, and Madam also spoke about how the world has changed in the post-pandemic era. So I'm not going to repeat those points. But what I will do is, from an Autodesk standpoint, how are we reinventing education, and how are we aligning with the national education policy? Now, when the national education policy was rolled out in 2020, I think one of the key areas which really aligns with Autodesk as a technology leader is kind of having a more flexible curriculum, introducing interdisciplinary education with project-based learning outcomes. I think that's very, very important, because while the book knowledge is very, very important, but how the student can work in a collaborative environment, in a team, use the relative technologies, and how they can actually do experiential learning is the need of the hour. So that is where Autodesk as a technology leader is focusing on. So why are we focusing on education, and what's our goal behind it? So if you really look at Autodesk as a company, we are primarily focused on design and manufacturing, digital tools for design and manufacturing. So there was an NSDC report which talked about a 90 million skills gap in design and in various manufacturing roles. And this is till the end of 2020, and this skills gap is going to increase as we move forward in the next decade or so. So if you look at 90 million across different job roles in manufacturing, I think Autodesk can contribute significantly in some of the job roles in the manufacturing sector. If you look at the traditional disciplines of engineering where Autodesk is focusing on, primarily the mechanical and the civil engineering discipline, whenever I go to an engineering institution and colleges, I see that the intake is reducing in mechanical and civil, and the intake is increasing in computer science and electronics and other disciplines. But if you look around, with the population increasing, recently there was an article that we are going to surpass, the population of China very, very soon. And today we are at about 7.5 billion population. And by 2050, we are expected to be at about 10 billion population. So when the population is increasing, especially the middle class population, it calls for a lot of infrastructure, it calls for a lot of communication devices, it calls for houses. It actually calls for introducing newer and newer products into the market. And statistics show that with this increase in the population, approximately about 3,72,000 products need to be introduced into the market every year. Okay? So, what does this bring me to? This brings me to that the traditional way the mechanical engineering and civil engineering is working, I think we need to move away from the traditional civil and mechanical engineering job roles and move to newer and emerging job roles that are the need of the hour for the industry today. So while we have a very, very good foundational curriculum, I think this foundational curriculum needs to be blended with what the industry requires, okay, with newer technology. Things like, I am talking more from a design and manufacturing standpoint, things like additive manufacturing, design for manufacturing, generative design, embedded electronics, and so on and so forth. So I think the foundational curriculum, along with the blend of the industry requirements, is what will actually have graduate engineers, especially in mechanical and conventional disciplines of engineering, to get newer job roles in the industry. If I talk to any manufacturing industry, let's say Larsen and Toubro or TVS, all of them recruit engineers, and once they recruit the engineers, they have finishing schools where they invest 1 year in training and retraining them. And so if they are able to deploy them right away, then those engineers and designers would be suitable for the newer job roles. And that is the only way that we can increase the demand for mechanical engineering, moving away from the traditional roles into the newer job roles. Because the reason behind all this is because of automation. Okay, if you really look at 80% of the skills that were trained earlier can now be outperformed by machines. So those skills become redundant, but there is a huge opportunity in front of us. We have a huge student population up to the age bracket of 25. So my sincere request to all the government stakeholders is that, the national education policy is definitely a good framework, but let us go ahead and implement some of the changes that are required by the industry and bring in those additional subjects into the curriculum. I'm given to understand when I met up with the AICTE chairman, Professor Anil Sasrabuddhe, that Professor B. Ravi, chair professor of IIT Bombay, is working on the macro level curriculum framework, which will be announced very, very shortly. So we really have given our inputs, but I think once the curriculum becomes flexible, introduce these new subjects, partner with companies like Autodesk and other technology leaders in other complementing areas, and bring in those curriculum either in the regular curriculum or in the elective curriculum or as value-added programs and so on and so forth. Then I think we will be in a position through which you can fulfill the demands of the industry. Because one of the things that we really need to look at, and I'm going to end my presentation with an example here. If you look at General Motors, now one of the goals of General Motors is to bring in about 20 variants of the electric vehicle by 2023. So each electric vehicle, you won't believe, has about 30,000 components in an electric vehicle. So when they look at designing an electric vehicle, they look at what are the typical characteristics of it. What does the consumer look at? One is the customer experience. The other thing that the consumers look at is the mileage. Okay, The other thing is the lightweighting of the vehicle, okay, and the fuel efficiency of the vehicle. So when you look at all these parameters, GM as a manufacturer of the electric vehicle has to take all those considerations in view and then use technologies like generative design to actually design the electric vehicle. And why I am talking of generative design, because generative design is a technology which will change the way the designers are going to be working. So students need to really get adapted to generative design. Generative design is no more a passive design, it's an intelligent form of design where the computer algorithm through machine learning and artificial intelligence will basically give you different iterative design based on input parameters, and then you will get a set of iterative designs and then come up with the final design. So Autodesk as a company is working with generative design in designing the seat bracket of the new electric vehicle, which will actually reduce the weight. I don't remember the figures, but by reducing the weight of one component out of the 30,000 components, it brings in a lot of efficiency into the vehicle. So basically I want to end my presentation with this thought of that we are here as a technology leader to inspire the next generation, engage with the next generation of designers and engineers, and prepare them for the jobs of the future. So thank you very much once again, and thank you once again.
Thank you so much, Mr. Deepankar Bhattacharyya, for sharing with us your thoughts on where Autodesk can collaborate with the government ecosystem for inspire future generations and upgrade them or make them ready for the future need of the skilling factor. And as you have said that foundational curriculum, the need of the hour is the blending of foundational curriculum with the need of the industry, and I'm sure there Autodesk can play a role by partnering with the policy making bodies of the country so that we can inspire the youth of the country who can be future ready in terms of job role and skill workforce. Thank you so much.